So today's lesson, we're looking at midpoint and segment constructions. This is part 2. So this is midpoint and segment constructions continued. Dun, dun, dun. We have the same objective as our last lesson, which was calculating and constructing midpoints of segments. Last time we calculated. We used our formula and we found the numbers. Today we're going to focus on the physical construction, being able to draw physically where these things are. Okay? So let's start off with our constructions. I'm going to use this symbol, the little arrow here, to show that what we're about to do on this part of our paper is a how-to, a list of process steps that you have to take in order to accomplish something. Our first how-to is going to be how to construct congruent segments. We have 5 steps. The first step is to draw a line that is longer than the segment you're trying to copy. Because congruent segments have the same size and the same shape, when you construct a segment congruent to another, you've made a copy of it. It's not going to be the same segment. It's not going to be the same location. It's like a photocopy. Okay? Once you've drawn this line that you think is going to be bigger than the one you're trying to copy, you're going to place and label a point on that line. Will you do me a favor? Will you get this passed back to, it's kind of the light marker. Yes, him. Yes. No, for you. For you. That's what we're working on today. That should make it a little easier for you to see it. Okay. Number 3. After we've placed this point and we've given it a name, we've labeled it, you're going to set your compass radius. Remember, that's the distance between the feet of your compass, the needle and the pencil. You're going to set it to be equal to the length of the segment you are trying to copy. Once you have that length set as your compass radius, you're going to set your compass needle on the point from step 2, so the point that you placed on the line and that you drew. And then with your compass, you're going to draw an arc, just a bit of a circle. Doesn't have to be really big, but you want to draw this piece of a circle, this arc, so that it creates some sort of intersection with the line. You'll label that intersection point when you're all done. My last study guide. When you're done writing down your steps, take out your study guide, where we are going to copy line segment AB. And we're going to use the 5 steps that we just wrote. Tell me, what was step number 1?
Draw a line that is longer than the segment you want to copy.
And you can put that line anywhere you want. Thank you very much. Put the line anywhere you want. You can have it face in any direction you want. You can have it perfectly straight, horizontal, up and down, diagonal. No one cares as long as it's a straight line and you've used the straight edge of your protractor. And it's longer than what you think AB is. Step 2.
Place and label a point on that line.
Beautiful. Thank you. Place and label a point. There's where I'm going to put my point. I need a label.
A.
We can't use A. We already have it.
J.
J? Yes? Okay, J.
A.
All right. Save your points. If I didn't use yours right now, we will later. Next step.
Set compass radius to the length of the segment you want to copy.
All right. Here's the segment that I want to copy, AB. So I'm following step number 3, and I'm going to set my radius. I'm going to move my legs open and closed until the needle's on one end point and my pencil's on the other end point. Then, making sure that my legs don't get smushed or spread open, the compass legs, not mine. I'm going to place the needle on J, and I'm going to draw an arc. I'm going to draw it as dark as I'm able to without making my compass get all smushed. And I'm going to make sure that it's big enough that it intersects my line. Time to label this intersection.
K.
K, he said. So now I have that this line segment JK is congruent to line segment AB. We will have many congruent segment constructions. We will have many more times in which we write that line segments are congruent and that other figures are congruent to other things. Can you see that you'll have to write is congruent to a lot? Do you want a symbol so you don't have to write all those words?
Yes.
Yes.
Me too. Here's your symbol. Line segment JK is congruent to line segment AB. You've seen it before?
Yes.
Awesome. Now you know what it means. This is what I like to call the spicy Spanish equals. Because you know in Spanish you have that little squiggly line, the tilde? Yeah, and you put it on the end. So you turn a word like pena into a word like peña. Like Mr. Peña, right? So you change the sound of a letter by putting this mark. Well, here in math, we've changed the meaning of equals to something that is exactly the same to, it's not the same thing, it just has the same size and the same shape. Equals to congruent. Make sense? We've all done a congruent segment? We feel good about it?
Yes.
Yes? Estela, you do your congruent segment, you feel good about it?
Yes.
Awesome. Oh, calm down. Let's go ahead and write down the steps, how to do the next construction. Ooh, my line is so straight, look at me.
So it's just
Oh, beautiful. Here's our next how-to. Our next how-to is how to construct a perpendicular bisector. I feel reasonably sure that if I said what's perpendicular, about half of you would be able to say, I've heard that word before.
Isn't it like a plus?
Well, okay, most of you could tell me you've heard the word before, and it sounds like about half of you can, yeah, can give me like a good description. I heard perfect plus, I heard it looks like this, the big T. And it sounds like a few of you can give me almost a precise definition, a checklist of what it means to be perpendicular. Go ahead.
It's a line that intersects at a 90-degree angle.
A line that intersects some other line at a 90-degree angle. This is going to come up again, but not today. And since we're kind of familiar with the word, I'm going to skip the definition for now. We'll give it to you formally later. But the word that I really want to work on is this word, bisector. Do y'all have maybe brothers and sisters or cousins or something?
I hate them.
You hate them? I'm sorry. Are they about your same age or maybe smaller?
Smaller.
They're all smaller? Has mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or someone forced you to share a sandwich with them? And they cut it in half? Yeah, I never shared either because I was the baby. And they just gave me whatever I wanted. Yeah, right? I'm kind of a brat that way. Okay, so those or if you don't have siblings, have you ever made a sandwich and you're like, you know what, I'm going to cut it in half? Like you go to Subway and they cut the sandwich in half?
No.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of those situations, you can imagine cutting a sandwich in half, yes?
Yes.
Well, the person who's cutting that sandwich in half is your sandwich bisector. Because they've cut it in half. So a bisector is going to be any object, anything, any person that cuts some other object in half. So, mom forcing you to share a sandwich. Or the person at Subway who is feeding you. So, next time you go to Subway, tell me how the funny look they give you. When you go to Subway and they cut it, you go, you're my bisector. Oh, that is weird, isn't it? You're my sandwich bisector.
I don't like when she's gonna kick us out.
They're going to look at you so weird. And it's okay because there's the one here in La Feria, the one that has the reddish hair, the colored hair, real pretty. I think her name is Ronnie. Tell her, go, it's okay. I'm Miss Carranza's student. She'll go, oh, I understand. All right, let's give you the list of instructions on how to be your very own perpendicular bisector. Step number 1. Set your compass's radius to your best guess of a little more than half of the length of the segment that you are wanting to bisect. Step number 2. Once you have this distance set as your radius, you're going to draw 2 arcs. But they need to be really big. And you need to draw one from each of the 2 endpoints of the segment that you are wanting to bisect. It's going to look like a fish or an eye when we're done drawing it. You'll see once we draw it, it's going to look like a fish. Okay. It's super, super duper, 3 stars super duper important that when you draw these arcs, that you make these arcs big enough so that they intersect each other. If you don't draw them big enough to intersect, you will never find where your bisector is. Once you've drawn these big arcs and you've found your bisector, you found your intersections, you need to label those intersections. Use these two intersections then to draw the line that contains them. That line is your bisector. That's the person at Subway cutting your sandwich in half. When you order the foot long, if you order the 6-inch, they don't cut it. Makes me sad. They should cut it. Oh, look. It lined up. So our bisector is the line that contains those intersections. The last thing to do then is to look at where this bisector intersects the segments and label the intersection. Once you've labeled the intersection, that intersection is the midpoint of the segment. It's a smiley face. Thank you. This gives you a way to locate the midpoint. Remember back on the skills practice, numbers 5 and 6?
Yes.
You had to locate the midpoint. This is what you do, these steps. Let's practice these steps so that when you go to do it on your skill practice, you know exactly how to do it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, so here's my skill practice. The first thing you need to know is please put another sheet of paper under the skills practice and have it kind of sticking out of the top of it, because I was really derp, and I'm sorry, when I was typesetting and I didn't leave you enough space above line segment CD, the one that we're going to bisect. And the arc intersects, the arcs are going to end up intersecting off the paper, which is not helpful because you need that intersection to draw the bisector. So use another sheet of paper to extend it a little bit to give you room. Okay? All right, step 1. We're going to set the compass radius to a little more than half. So here's one endpoint. I'm not going to set it way over here. That's just, no, too big. But I'm not going to set it way over here, too small. This is my guess for the middle, so I'm going to go a little bit more. Okay? So I'm going to draw the arc. I don't know how big of an arc I need. So I'm going to draw a really big, like almost a full circle, almost a half circle. Like that's a, okay, that should be a big enough arc. Notice it's really kind of a big arc that I'm drawing. Using that same radius, I'm going to draw it from the other endpoint. Now I don't have to make this arc as big, I just need it big enough so that I can see those intersections. Kind of looks like a fish. Or an eye? Not really? Okay, that's all right. I'm not mad. Kidding. I'm totally kidding. Our next step was to do what?
Label.
Label those intersection points.
Yes.
So here's one. Here's the other. Can I please, please, please have names for these points?
A.
I can't use A because I've already used it.
P.
I can't use D because that's already used.
Q.
I heard T and Q.
E.
E.
Next step was to do what? Draw the line that contains them. You're right. Draw the line that contains them.
Yes.
Okay. Take a look at my fingertips. You see how they're kind of going a little white?
Yes.
Means I'm putting a lot of pressure down on the protractor. I'm doing that so that way I can draw one line really fast and straight, and I can press sideways a little bit against my protractor. So if you're ever drawing them and you find that the protractor keeps sliding on you, you put a little more pressure down, it won't move for you, okay? This is a line. And so we can say that line TQ is the bisector of line segment CD. Our next step was to find where the bisector and the segment intersect, and then label it. Go. Label.
Z.
I heard Z.
P. S.
D.
E. R. P.
I love all these letters. I only needed one. Thank you so much.
Well,
E.
If you want to label yours P, you can. On my diagram, Z is the midpoint of line segment CD. From yesterday, because it's the midpoint of CD, what can we say about this segment CZ?
It's equal to Z.
He's saying that the measurements are equal
Congruent.
and the line segments are congruent. We can say all of those things. We can say something else too. You said that these are congruent, yes?
Yes.
Which means they have the same measure?
Yes.
Okay. And try to phrase this question so it's not confusing. Looking at the measure of CZ, how is the length of that measure related to the measure of the entire thing?
Half.
It's half. Because Z is right in the middle. You're exactly right. Brilliant. CZ is half the measure of CD. Because CZ is right in the middle. It's halfway. It's the midpoint. You guys are amazing. Yes. I'd like to skip all the way down to the bottom of our page,
the last one.
to the very last one, to this one. You're familiar with measuring things, yes? You have a ruler? How long is a ruler? 12 inches or 1 foot. Have you ever stopped to wonder why they call it a foot?
It's the size of a foot.
But whose foot? Not my foot.
Not mine.
You're not yours. Not my husband's foot either. Where did they come up with this weirdness?
Yeah.
Well.
They're so weird. 1 foot.
I actually looked it up because I was curious. It turns out that way back in the day, one of the kings of England decided he was so important, he needed a unit of measure based on him. Literally, himself. So he said, we will take the length of my foot and we will use it to mark off distances in my kingdom.
That is huge.
And so they took a stick and they put it down and he stepped on the stick and they marked where his foot started and where his foot stopped, and we picked up his foot. They went, behold, this measurement is one of the king's foot. And so England since that day has measured everything in the foot of one of its kings. I think it was one of the Georges. They've had like 1 million of them. I don't know which one. You can, it was one of the Georges. I just don't know which one because they've had like 1 million. So you can Google that one and tell me later which George it was. But the important thing to us is this sense of deciding something to be a unit of length and being asked to construct a segment where the length of it is 2 of the units that are AB long and half of the CD unit long. Okay? Let me walk you through how to construct those because that last part of your homework assignment is all about those. We're going to start off constructing congruent segments, so I'm going to draw a line that I think is going to be longer than 2 AB units next to each other and then half of CD next to it. Okay? I think it's going to be no longer than that. I hope I'm right. If I'm wrong, I can add a little bit more to my line, but I'm going to go ahead and use this. And then I'm going to mark a point.
The middle one or the last
This is the very last one. Thank you. Help me name this point.
B.
P. P was not used at all yet. Thank you so much.
V.
Okay, hold on to that one. We're going to need one more point at the end. I only need one right now. Thank you. All right, I need to find out the measure of 2AB. In order to get 2AB, can't I just take 1AB and...
Multiply by 2.
Well, but I don't have numbers, so I can't do multiplication.
Will.
Okay, if you were measuring with your feet, if you were the king, and you needed to pace off and figure out how far it was to the wall from where you are, how would you measure your foot
You could just
to
walk.
count? But how? But would you take a big step?
No, you take low steps.
Small steps. How small step?
Like,
Like
foot to foot.
Foot to foot. You would put the heel of one foot right next to the in front of the toes of the other foot. Yes? We're going to do the same thing, but with AB and our compass. Thank you. So I'm going to scoot this down. Here's my segment AB at the very top of the page. I'm going to mark off its distance. There is the size of my king AB's foot. I'm going to come back to where I have my line with P. And putting my needle on P, I'm going to make the arc. There's the toe, the toes of one of my king AB's foot. Now he's going to take a step, and I'm going to put the heel, the needle of my compass right on that mark. And I'm going to mark again where his toes are. That length from this point P all the way to wherever this mark is the distance of 2 of my AB lengths. Make sense?
Yes.
Now we want to add to this length, we're going to keep going before we get to the end, half CD. Okay, I'm going to scoot this down again so we can look at our CD segment at the very top of the page. Which segment is half CD?
Z.
CZ or
EC.
ZD. It could be either one, whichever one you like the best. mark off that distance, then come back, and we're gonna start where his toes were from the step where we left off, and we're gonna put the heel of this new, maybe this is the prince's foot, okay? It's half the size. And we're gonna mark out, or the queen's foot, we could do that too. And we're gonna mark that off. And this measurement from here to this point is half CD, giving us a grand total length for this segment. I need a name for that other point.
U.
Giving us a grand total length for the measurement of line segment PU as 2AB plus 1/2 CD.